Ladies and gentlemen, can we be upstanding, please? And welcome to the Armidale Regional Council meeting. And I'm glad to see there's a lot of people here going to last through the meeting. I appreciate you coming. We, the councillors of the Armidale region, declare that we will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of our community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us to the best of our skills and judgment. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armidale regional community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. Now, this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised to do so by council. The have your say, people. All speakers are requested to ensure their comments are relevant to the particular agenda item. The chairperson may withdraw the privilege to speak where a speaker makes personal remarks or criticisms or uses abusive or inappropriate language. Speakers do not enjoy any special protection arising from comments made during council meetings and should therefore refrain from making defamatory remarks or personal defamatory statements against any individuals. I'd ask all people to turn their phones on to silent or off, please. Thank you. So, councillors, there's no apologies. Is there any disclosure of interest, councillors? No. Okay, public forum, have your say. We've got 3 speakers today. So I'd like to welcome Helen Webb to the podium, please. So you have 5 minutes, Helen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of Armidale Regional Council declaring a climate emergency. My name's Helen Webb. I'm convener of Sustainable Living Armidale's Climate Action Group, and I also received Armidale Regional Council's 2019 Environmental Citizen of the Year Award. This award called on me to step up in my commitment and action in the face of the substantial environmental challenges we're facing. Thanks also to councillors for listening and giving deep consideration and support to the issue of the climate emergency. I'm impressed by the diversity and strengths as well as creativity of councillors, for example, Brad and John being prepared to look a bit silly to mobilise behavioural change in the community. Well done. I asked some of you to do some reading. The Bureau of Meteorology's State of the Climate Report 2018. Then I thought I should pay you the respect of doing the same and reading Council's Community Strategic Plan and the Green Print for a Sustainable Future. So moving on, this is the climate strike, the people at the climate strike. What is the climate emergency? Well, it's actually a bit different to what I had thought. I thought back in 2015, a few hundred of us signed this, calling on the Australian government to Paris to achieve legally binding agreement that would limit global warming to under 2 degrees. When I really focused on this issue, I realised 1 degree is too hot. We are already getting significant die-off of the coral and the Great Barrier Reef. We're getting Arctic and Antarctic ice melt with the ice shelves in the Antarctic disintegrating. We're getting huge species lost. Pacific islands are drowning because of rising sea levels. We're getting heat waves, huge health issues. Locally, we have unprecedented drought. We made it into the Sydney Morning Herald again today on that issue. Dying trees, water shortage, bushfires, impact on economy and food production, and the potential that we may run out of water. Underlying global warming combined with natural climate cycles is meaning that we're not in a safe climate. Next slide. These two graphs really impressed me. This one, you can actually find this in the 2018 State of the Climate Report. You can see that CO2 levels have been murmuring along there for 8,000 years and many more than that in a fairly narrow zone, and they have just gone straight up. So that's not consistent with any of the other CO2 measurements that we've had. We've got it doubling in the last 20 years. Next slide. And then there's this graph, which is in the booklet that I handed you, and I looked up the reference for that, found this on the internet. It's change in temperature over the past 20,000 years. The blue part is the last 10,000 years when humans started agriculture. So if you put it on a geographical time scale rather than just the last 50 years or something, you can see again the temperature shooting straight up. It's only got to 1 at this stage. It hasn't gone into the red zone. 1 minute. Keep going. Why declare emergency? Australia's emissions are still rising. We have already got enough CO2 in the atmosphere to heat to 1.5 degrees. We're running out of time. Urgent action is needed. Council's already had to refocus from outcomes identified in Community Strategic Plan to adapting to the water crisis, and Council is well placed to lead and work collaboratively with community towards our region's contribution to a safe climate. Have a look at the background to the motion to see strengths and anticipated benefits in our region. Next slide. How do we respond? We're asking Council to work with the local community to mobilise and take action at a scale and speed that will restore a safe climate. This is different to our usual concept of emergency, which is mostly about prevention.
Time's up.
Okay, and you'll see the rest of it. Mostly about prevention. We need a longer time frame here. We're not talking about bushfire, fix it now. You've got the Project 030 underway. We need to draw down carbon, adapt to changes already underway as we're doing, and influence. And Council's well placed to influence and work together with other councils and other levels of government. Thank you very much for your time.
So, Kyle, you're up. The clock is down the bottom left-hand side, if you can see it. It was pretty hard to see there.
I thank the councillors for their time in hearing this motion. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and I would also like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. I believe it's important that we keep this in mind as the decision on this motion, it relates to this land, and our decisions have an effect on this land. Today, I wish to speak to you about why declaring a climate emergency is necessary. I wish to offer you a youth and young adult perspective to this issue. I would like to talk about the intergenerational inequality that inaction would bring to the younger generations in the future. I would like to talk about how taking action requires courage, something I believe our council has. Finally, I would like to talk about a way forward in regards to declaring a climate emergency. Why declare a climate emergency? Councillors, we are currently in one of the worst droughts in history, and your actions and quick response to the water crisis was admirable, and you should all be commended. However, we are experiencing consecutively hotter temperatures across the board, even in winter, and more anomalous climate events like the drought. With no action, this will continue with increasing frequency. The youth in our community are aware of this, hence the climate strikes. The climate strikes were a demonstration displayed in this community that people are calling for urgent action. Today you have the ability to initiate and support that action. If you don't, you would be contributing to intergenerational inequality. Without action, the responsibility of repairing the climate is shirked onto our youth, and it will be the youth who tackle this issue, asking the whole time, why didn't our leaders do something? Why is it left up to us? If it is because the cost of change is too high, well, the cost of inaction is higher, and it has a lasting effect on us. I was lucky enough to be a panelist on SLA's Youth Futures Forum. There, I talked about what I wanted the future to look like. I said I wanted to see a future where our leaders had the courage to care about the environment and the impact we have on it. It takes courage to take a stand against climate change, and it will take courage to not just declare a climate emergency, but to act on it. You've already shown what decisive action in an emergency can achieve. Moreover, we have a fantastic waste management facility, and our state MP, Adam Marshall, has been receptive and supportive of green energy. We have the University of New England, a hub for innovation and emerging science. And at the heart of this, we have our community. We are lucky that we live in a community so passionate about its town and surrounding areas. In your community strategic plan for 2017 and 2027, environmental protection and sustainable living were some of the key issues. Declaring a climate emergency will require Council to refocus its strategic plan to strong climate and environmental actions. Councillors, you've already shown us that you care about your community. Now show us that you have the courage to vote unanimously in declaring a climate emergency. It's with deep respect, and I thank you all for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Herman Bayersdorf.
Oh, it is now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and also, if I dare say, members of the public who've turned up in good numbers. I'll just start by ad-libbing by saying it's exactly these sort of people, and I hope I'm not wrong, that come to today's meeting for the climate emergency debate mainly, I suspect, but it's exactly these sort of people that would come to a town hall meeting on the issue that I'm discussing, which is 8.4, which is to have a public meeting on, well, all kinds of water issues from, I won't even go into detail because that's not the point here. So I would hope that members of the public who are here and many more would come to any town hall meeting that may be held, if this motion is, of course, passed. Having said that, maybe the word town hall is a bit too abrasive. Maybe people think town hall has got, you know, left-wing, what's the word here, hijackers, throwing paper aeroplanes or whatever. Maybe if the word town hall is a bit too explosive or too controversial, maybe, well, we could have it in here, but I suspect more people would come. So how about a more neutral place like the bowling club auditorium or the RX Services auditorium, or indeed the mall in the daytime? Look, I'm really astounded, not by the motion, obviously, or notice of motion, which I fully support, and I hope, councillors, that you will support it. I'm rather astonished at what's called a management comment, because I think, and this is a personal opinion, that management here, as probably so often, is crossing the line between management, which means administration, and basically doing what they're told by councillors, crossing that line to enter the political debate, I'm sorry to say. Now, the political debate is right here. And 1, 2, 3, 11 councillors, you're the ones who should be making this sort of decision uninfluenced by any sort of comments which are very one-sided. Now, let me just go on about some of the points. Well, town hall meetings are not conducive to providing a meaningful outreach. They're often hijacked by individuals with an agenda. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Is one standing here right now? Possibly. But the point is, in the past, this council had public hall meetings on very controversial issues such as the sale of council land. And believe it or not, and I think Councillor O'Connor might have been part of our council and Councillor Murat as well. I think we survived that meeting. We took out some of the good points and threw out the bad points. Hello. So why is council, well, I'm not sure about council because we haven't had the vote in the debate, but why is management afraid to actually go to a public meeting? You're not legally bound to accept any recommendations or opinions. You're just there to, to listen.
Herman, if you can just refrain from comments about the administration.
I'm not making any personal innuendos. I'm just saying that the administration is actually crossing the line between management and politics. I think that's a legitimate comment to make, Mr. Mayor, but I'm going on anyway on other topics. Now, I do agree with some of the report in that some of the actions that have been taken or are being taken are quite good and legitimate. I, for one, went to the meeting run by the business chamber, and I think Mr. McDonald actually gave a presentation and there was Q&A, but again, it was only a small sector of the community. That's exactly what council should be doing, and I congratulate them for that, and having stalls in the mall. But a lot of what council is actually doing is very one-sided, and I hope that's not intended as a personal defamatory remark. It's very one-sided. It's sort of just pushing an opinion onto the people rather than having a genuine dialogue. And finishing off, before I perhaps get cut off, can I just say, finally, that councillors, and dare I say, and certainly management, should, if they haven't already done so, or do it again, read the Local Government Act, especially Section 8A, number 3, which is about consultation, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't, of course, specify that the meeting has to be in a town hall twice a year, but it does talk about consultation. And that doesn't mean one-sided information, it actually means a two-way process. So, Mr. Mayor, I do hope to see you, the councillors, and indeed the relevant officers of council at such a meeting in the near future. Thank you.
So, councillors, moving forward, can I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmation minutes, please? Councillor Martin, Councillor Witters, any comments? Any councillors got comments regarding those minutes? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. There's no mayoral minutes, so we move on to item 8.1.
Could I put forward a procedural motion to put 8.2 ahead of 8.1 in consideration of the gallery and the speakers, Mr. Mayor?
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As long as Councillor Robinson, you're ready for that?
Yeah, I'll second it and I'll be ready.
Those in favour? Carried. Okay, go for 8.2, which is climate emergency declaration with 5 parts. So, moved by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Gray?
Can I please add in an amendment to Part C? And the reason for this amendment is to, I think we can make it more productive and a better option than what's there, considering the resources within council and also acknowledging the relationship with UNE with 030 project. It should be coming up. So it's a change in Part B if Councillor Robinson is amenable to the amendment to AY. Now, do we want to... There it is there. Part
What you're moving is amendment.
Part C of the motion. to change it to the above.
Councillor Robinson, do you accept that change? Councillor Gray, you turn your mic off, please.
Yeah, I think I'd like to leave it as it is for the moment, and we could possibly discuss alternative wordings a bit later.
So we have a amendment by Councillor Gray. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Martin?
Point of order, Mr. Chair, you haven't taken a seconder for the
No, but I'm just about to get to that. I'm just wondering, I'm just looking for a seconder for the council. Did you second that? Oh, sorry, I thought you were moving that. So, sorry, Councillor Withers, it's Councillor Gray. So, Councillor,
Councillor,
Yeah, and I think Councillor O'Brien's hand was up at exactly the same time.
sorry, I was looking at a hand over here. So, Councillor Withers has put his hand up to move a seconder.
Well, I think that's, no, I think you need to call it again because Councillor O'Brien
Okay.
put her hand up at
Councillor-
exactly the same time originally.
It's me that does it. I saw Councillor Withers put his hand up. Sorry, Councillor O'Brien. So I might just, at this stage, just ask Councillor Robinson just to introduce her motion, then we'll go to the amendment.
okay, thank you. And I'd really like to acknowledge the efforts of several of my councillor colleagues and tonight's excellent speakers from the community on this motion, especially the speakers from Sustainable Living Armadale. And this is a really important motion because we're all concerned about the enormous harm that will be done if the global temperature rises by 2 degrees. And so I urge all councillors to recognise the considerable community support for urgent action on climate change and the direct benefits to our region in terms of jobs and growth that will result from becoming a renewable energy hub, as well as avoiding the terrible impacts of droughts, bushfires, and other extreme weather events. And this really is an emergency because the only way to limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, which everybody considers safe, or maybe as safe as we might be able to get, is to take action, urgent action now. The rise in global temperatures will not stop even when we finally get down to zero net emissions. And that's something that currently New South Wales doesn't aim to achieve until 2050. Even when we reach zero net emissions, temperatures will still continue to increase because of the greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere. And we might even see faster temperature rises because of feedback mechanisms such as melting glaciers and polar ice, so that the heat that's currently reflected back into space by these glaciers and ice caps will instead be there to warm our planet. And there's also a problem with the release from permafrost and undersea ice of methane, which is a powerful greenhouse gas that in the short term causes 86 times as much warming as the same amount of carbon dioxide. So the current devastating drought and bushfires should be a wake-up call, as we've heard from the speakers, about what our future climate will be like with more extreme weather. And the well-extended climate strike in Armadale Central Park shows the considerable support of our community, as do the excellent speakers today. Many of our community members have appropriate skills and knowledge and have expressed their willingness to support and work with Council in responding to a climate emergency. And Armadale Express said yesterday, one of our local GPs explained why climate change is this century's greatest health challenge. And this adds to the voices of the Australian Medical Association, the insurance industry, which we saw today, the Reserve Bank of Australia, the Climate Council, and even prominent members of our Defence Force, that we need strong and effective action. So by supporting this motion, we show leadership, we respect the wishes of our community, and even we support our peak body, Local Government New South Wales, who last week passed a climate emergency declaration, as have 25 other councils in New South Wales. So please remember the tremendous benefits for our community in terms of jobs and growth as well as safeguarding our climate. New England and the Northern Tablelands are two of the 4 renewable energy zones listed in the Australian Energy Market Operators Integrated System Plan. And the New Scientist on 15th of October, only a couple of weeks ago, reported that the US green economy, and that includes renewable energy and environmental consultancy, has 10 times as many jobs as the fossil fuel industry. So let's pass this motion to respect the wishes of our community, bring jobs and growth to our region, and help safeguard our climate to reduce the terrible impact of drought and extreme weather events. Thank you.
So we have a mover and a second for an amendment. So Councillor Gray.
I would like to, first of all, acknowledge the words of our fellow councillor Robinson. She spoke very, very well on a matter that is obviously very passionate for many in our community and as well as some of our councillors. Now, the reason for this amendment is to streamline the reporting side of the original motion in that, and to acknowledge particularly the relationship that Council has with UNE with the 030 project, in that also acknowledging that there is restricted capacity for Council administratively to undertake reporting, especially in that time frame, and to streamline or to reduce duplication of any work, particularly as it's my understanding that Project Zero, a lot of the information required is in the brief with that project. So it also means that we can use if we can get the report through Project 030 to then come to Council, then UNE with their resources will be able to put together a far more comprehensive and accurate report to us as the community as well as Council. The other concern that I had was whether it was doable to have the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee do a working group under its current structure. I'm aware that if there was to be a working group, it would need to come back through Council to be endorsed, the same as the Mall Reference Group was, that same sort of structure. It's not quite under the same structure as what the new Regional Growth and Place Activation Pilot Committee is. So I thought that this would just streamline the reporting.
Councillor Mung.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd also like to acknowledge and support the words of Councillor Robinson. She spoke very well and very truly. The amendment doesn't have any impact on the crux of the motion of Council showing leadership, respecting the opinion of our community and recognising that we are in a climate emergency. It just intends to bring in the uni with their considerable resources through Project 030, which will support a more comprehensive report.
A speaker against the amendment? Okay. Councillor Connor?
Oh, look, I oppose the motion. It's come out of the blue. There's been no discussion over a motion that's been, workshopped because of the significance of it. I think that it complicates matters. It puts us as a council, way beholden to the timetable that the 030 project makes. This is our motion. This is something for council to do. There's absolutely no reason why council can't cooperate with the Project 030 board and that project, because we've already made a resolution in a previous meeting to that effect. So at its base, this is a superfluous amendment, and fundamentally it basically shoves part of our responsibility onto a third party over whom we have really no say. So I would think, given that this has been a carefully worked out motion, it's incumbent on council to respect that and not bring a last minute change that actually is quite significant in terms of the operational activation of the motion. So I do oppose it. Let's not complicate the matter. Let's just go forward under the present partnership with the 030 project and take responsibility. Excuse me. Take the responsibility that we should, as a council, join the other 25 councils and the other hundreds and hundreds of councils and governments around the world in moving forward with this. Thank you.
Speaker for the amendment? Councillor Tiley?
No, against the amendment.
For
No,
the-
well, that's,
for-
I'm waiting to speak against
Yep.
the amendment. Thank you.
Any speaker? If there's no...
Yeah, look, I'll chime in. But may I ask the mover of the amendment whether she wants to chuck in a time frame for if the 030, because up there is not agree with the crux of the amendment, but would like to see a time frame put on 030 to come back to council, because otherwise it can just go on and on. And what we're trying to do with this motion is to get something happening in the immediate future. So if we can put a time frame on them, which then allows council to continue to put their time and energies into the current situation of the drought and fires and all that sort of stuff, but still gets a lot of what we're trying to achieve out of this done quickly using the UNE's resources, that would be good. So I would ask even support of the amendment if the mover would put in like a 0.6 of a time frame.
Councillor Gray, can you just, if you wish to put a time frame on that? So, he's... Councillor O'Connor. He's not speaking against it. He just wants to know whether there's a time frame being put on. So just ask Councillor Gray. Councillor Gray, have you considered a time frame? Councillor Tyler, your microphone,
I'm
please.
waiting to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, you will. Just
That should
I've
flash
asked.
green or something.
I've asked. Yes, you'll be next.
It's my understanding that project 030 has a timeline, and maybe that's more more appropriate to see what their timeline is around this. So if we can get that timeline to council and that part of that sort of briefing as to how the project's going within a time frame that's suitable, I would be open to suggestions.
Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would be a tragedy if we get bogged down in the semantics of how we make this work. There's no doubt in my mind that we're all of a will around this table to stand up, show leadership and declare a climate emergency. That's what's most important. How we do it, there's various ways. Project 2030 is great. It's one action that we've already decided to take on. Why hitch our wagon to that project when there's many, many other ways that we can address the climate emergency by way of adaptation and mitigation? Let's pass this unanimously, then let's get on with the doing. And I don't have any difficulty with these people mentioned under C or whomever. Let's be a broad church and let's ask the public for their support and let's get on with it.
A speaker for the amendment? A speaker for? If not, Councillor Robinson, you're right to reply.
Thank you. Well, as has already been said, we already have Project Zero, and we'll be doing everything that's in Councillor Gray's amendment anyway, irrespective of whether this climate emergency is passed or not. So really, we aren't adding, if we just accepted that amendment, we would be probably adding nothing, and it would mean that council wouldn't be doing nothing for 1 or 2 years, which is my understanding, having read the Project Zero, that it will take before they get the baseline, before they get to the carbon sequestration option. And secondly, And I think the most important thing is that, as stated in the background to this motion, there are many, many community members who have appropriate skills and are willing to support and help council in other ways of reducing and mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, and that is what we really have to do. And the recommendations in C that we involve a working group of the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee and the community in these initiatives is a really good way of getting the input, getting the ideas, and getting on with the job, which is really what we have to do if we really believe, as I tried to point out before, that this really is an emergency, because if we don't act now, it will be too late to keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees, and that could be a disaster for our climate and for future generations. As the saying goes, there is no planet B. This is the only planet we've got, so let's work together to look after it.
Okay, I'll put, sorry.
Can I just ask a question for a little minute, please?
John, this is the votes. I'm just about to call the vote because of the on the amendment. So those people in favour of the amendment? Those people against? 6. So the amendment is lost. So going back to the original motion, so we've had the mover and seconder speaking.
Yep. As a second of the motion now, I will speak for the motion. This just makes common sense. Any debate on this is really a waste of time. Last week at the Local Government New South Wales conference, it was voted that Local Government New South Wales take the fight to state government to declare a climate emergency. That was passed, and I think we should follow in the footsteps of those guys and continue that sort of thing. I've spoken before about my beliefs around climate change. I really want to commend those in the gallery, those that have put this motion together. It's a community-driven motion, not a single person, but a lot of people with some hard work. So thank you to them. Thank you to the speakers. I can also see some of the organisers of the climate strike here today. So it's not just a one-off thing. It's something that the community wants, and we, as their representative, need to really stand up for them and push this initiative. You will get some people who will strawman this argument and say, well, if you want to change things, stop using your phone and stop driving your car and stop using your lawnmower and all that sort of stuff. But in the world of Facebook, they always come up with something good. The inventor of the light bulb invented it by candlelight. The inventor of the car used horse and buggy while he was doing it. And people have to live in the world that they are in while they're making change. So to make change, you've still got to live in the world that you're in. But again, we no longer cruise around on horses and buggies, and we no longer, most of us, sit by candlelight. So those things were done using things. So those sort of small arguments are pointless and frivolous. And as I've said before, if you want to continue having that sort of debate, sit in your circle and drink your coffee and do whatever while the rest of us move along. Now, there's also the debate on, it's been going on for ages and the climate's been going up and down. Well, previous civilisations didn't have the knowledge or the technology that we have to be able to adapt to this sort of an issue. If we don't do so, then, as has been mentioned before, this civilisation, as many have before, will perish due to our lack of action. So, not much more to say on that, because I think it's just a common sense thing that we get it over and done with. And let's move on for the rest of the meeting, because this really shouldn't have any debate.
A speaker against the motion? Councillor Gillespie.
Well, this is a question, and you can take it for or against it, whatever you like. But with the 030 and the university, why can't we just put an amendment in that the crew from 030 be part of discussions and whatever it is? I mean, it's no biggie, but they can be a part of it, I believe.
Do you wish an amendment on that?
So they are in it anyway?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for giving me the time.
Speaker against the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote, because there's no speakers against. So those in favour? Carried.
Yeah.
So, does the gallery want to leave? If a lot of people want to leave, I might just hold proceedings from it. So, councillors, 8.3. No, but 8.1 is unlawful, so there's nothing we can do. 8.3,
Moved.
to move councillor O'Connor. Seconder. Councillor O'Brien, you seconding? If you read it, it's deemed unlawful. So we, for information, so you can do so afterwards. So O'Connor moved, someone second? If there's no seconder, Councillor Robinson, are you seconding?
Yes, are you seconding? Oh, look, Councillor Robinson have had discussions, and I understand Councillor Robinson seconding with an amendment, to which I'm in agreement.
Councillor Robinson, are you seconding this? If there's no seconder, the motion lapses.
Yes.
With an amendment or?
No, that's what Councillor Gray just did, so, no.
I'll second it for discussion
Okay,
purposes.
Councillor Tyler. Councillor O'Connor.
Well, I believe there's an amendment which Councillor Robinson would like to put, and I'm quite comfortable with it. So, but she's more across. Well, she's got the wording, so I'll ask her to speak to it.
Well, this could either be an amendment or a foreshadowed motion, but I'll read it out anyway. And that is that council continues to work with the head gardener at Somers Homestead Historical Trust House to develop strategies to support the maintenance of gardens during the ongoing drought and ensure that valuable trees do not die. To develop strategies to support the maintenance of gardens during the drought and ensure that valuable trees do not die. No.
It's already been looked after.
So, Councillor...
Well, we could say valuable plants, if you like.
Councillor O'Connor, that's going to replace your mayonnaise motion. You're happy with that? I don't. So, Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, look, I'd just like to move this amended motion. We've had a little bit I was out at Somers a while ago and a couple of weeks ago, and it's clear that they're in difficulties with their historic trees, as well as we are with Central Park. And so it became a matter of discussion with some of us that we should extend watering support to Somers. On discussion with them, they've indicated that they're happy at the moment to work with council. The case is that they're trying to get a bore down to support ongoing watering of the whole of the garden, and I presume also the historic rose garden. But at the moment, the kind of support that they want isn't necessarily specifically water trucks from council. So I think this actually covers off the current situation better, but it does represent an undertaking by council to support Somers. I don't think I need to go on about the importance of Somers to our local tourism and visitor economy. It's absolutely critical, and we would be the sort of laughing stock or the reason to cry into our glasses if we saved our own historic trees and let those at Somers die for lack of water. They are in difficulties. They are cutting water. They do need help, and I think this best expresses it. And I can't see any major issue with this.
Councillor Tiley, sorry I didn't ask you whether you accept the amendment. So, Councillor Tiley, you wish to speak? Anyone wish to speak against the motion?
Yep.
Councillor Withers?
And I'll speak against it, then maybe ask a question of management. Pretty sure at the last meeting it was mentioned and spoken to that Central Park is being looked after, and looking at the management comment around Somers, I believe that's happening as well. This motion, although I agree with the context of it, it's like, it seems to me, and I'll get council's, might get the CEO's opinion on this, but it seems like we're asking council to do something they're already doing, and we're just basically saying the same sort of thing if we ask them to keep picking up our bins or keep providing car parks or keep fixing our roads. If it's something that they're already doing, they don't need us to tell them to do it. A motion like this would be necessary if council was not doing what's being asked to be done, and we would say, okay, this is a good spot. But so if I will get management's comment off it, if allowed, are they already doing this? What's being put into the motion, and do we really need to have a motion to tell you to do something you're already doing?
CEO?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Whether we have a motion or not is obviously entirely up to the council itself. I can say that our team leader in Parks and Gardens is in regular touch with the head gardener of Somers. In fact, as late as this afternoon, he was in touch with him. We are working closely with the gardeners at Somers, including the preparation of strategies, as well as the old Armidale Demerrick Council Memorandum of Understanding in relation to their access to a council bore to enable watering of the critical plants to continue.
Okay, speaker for the motion? And if not, Councillor Robinson?
Well, what I would like to say is this is an unprecedented drought and things could get worse. And even though council is doing the right thing now, it is good for us councillors to express support for what they're doing. And in particular, just to say that we really are very keen to see the maintenance of the gardens during this drought and ensure that valuable plants don't die, because this is really, really important to our community, and we should be making sure that we do it and do it well. And by passing this motion, we express support in that way, and that is definitely a good thing.
A speaker against, Councillor Galetti?
Look, well, I suppose I think that our job is to actually talk to the people of this community. I know that I do a little bit, and I actually took the time out to talk to the head gardener this morning about it, seeing it was on the agenda. Council, a long time ago, put a bore in that the council has had up and running and have done maintenance and paid electricity to pump it up there and all that sort of stuff. So we are, look, we're supporting them anyway. All that it should be is just a bit of a kick along to say, yes, the council is giving them a hand, which we are. I don't know, they haven't been getting any water out of this bore, whether it's through maintenance issues or stuff like that, but I do believe it is up to them to pull their own weight and have a crack. We've put something there for them. Yes, it probably is up to them, and if we can give them a hand to put a bore in later on or whatever, through whatever resources we can, I think that wouldn't be too bad to have one, so that they have got one right up there for themselves, because this is right down on the New England Highway where this particular bore is, down where Mickett's used to be. But I think we're supporting them anyway, and I think what we've got to do is actually communicate a bit better and talk to people. So that's what my position is on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Letley. Councillor Robinson, one thing, we can't stop plants dying. We don't have that authority. I wish we did, but we don't. A speaker for? If not,
Very simply,
Councillor
Mr Mayor, this motion is about working with Somers to develop strategies. It's not costing us, and in the commentary in relation to 8.3 on their page, that's essentially what the staff are saying. So this is very little different to that. Let's help these people, and let's get on with it.
Speaker against, Councillor Gray?
Look, with all due respect to the sentiments that's been put forward, and I actually agree with the sentiments, I totally agree with the comments of Councillor Witters. We are already doing this. We are already in continuous working relationship with the head gardener. We, as a council, are doing our utmost to support the maintenance of not just Somers, but all our gardens, Civic Park, Central Park and the trees there, other trees. This is duplicating what's already being done. And maybe it's not actually for decision. Maybe this is something to note and to actually thank and acknowledge the work that council is currently doing and continuing to do. Maybe that would be much better.
Speaker for? Councillor O'Connor, you're right to reply.
Oh, look, I'm happy to put in an amendment that council commends council's work to date with Somers and encourages that work, council to continue to work. And then I think we'd all be happy. And is my seconder, whoever that was, No, I'm not the seconder of my own motion. I think it was Councillor Tiley. So the amendment, if you could put it up, that council, it just needs to go in there.
Councillor O'Connor, it's a bit unusual because then we'd have to turn around and try and debate on a change of wording.
Well, I don't think so.
We're actually going to nearly vote on what the motion is. So unless you... Can you just talk to
I've tried to oblige the dissenters with something so that we can all get to a point of unanimity, Mr Mayor, and I think that's a positive thing for me to do, which you, from the chair, might consider supporting.
Councillor O'Connor, we do have a motion up there which you accepted as an amendment, a change.
Can I foreshadow then, if this motion is lost, that hang on, I'm talking, I'm just asking a question. If it gets lost, whether... My microphone's red. If Councillor O'Connor's amendment...
Yes, hang on, Councillor Witters.
You call on Councillor O'Connor to close the debate by having her right of reply. She's done that. That's the end of it.
That's what I'm trying to say. That is what I'm trying to say, Councillor Tiley.
Okay. So is that a order?
Councillor O'Connor, it's your right of reply.
Well, guys, let's just let the staff know how much we appreciate what they've been doing, and we can make that a matter arising from this motion, which is a note that staff be thanked for the work to date. And I put the motion as it currently stands, seeing as my amendment's been disallowed. And the basis of this motion is that there is clear, symbolic perhaps, evidence that the governing body of this council has great concerns for Somers, wants to support Somers, wants to support the staff of council that are working with Somers. There's clearly an issue about getting that bore working so that they've got ongoing water. I think this motion covers ongoing work to get water flowing from council's bore. I think that's a very important contextual matter to this motion. So I ask my fellow councillors to support it. It is symbolic, but it also offers great support to the staff that have been working with Somers and great support to Somers.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? 6. Motion's lost. Moving on to 8.4, which is the community Q&A water information session. Mover, please. Councillor O'Connor, seconder. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Dr. Bayersdorf for attending in the Have Your Say section. He's covered some of the areas, and I might add I haven't talked with Dr. Bayersdorf prior to today about this matter. Look, the reason that I think it's important for us to have a broad community meeting is that there's a lot more to be said, both from the community and from council. It's very important when you're in a crisis that you get together. I'm constantly asked questions like, where's your plan B? What's happening? Why was the water turned off at the Arboretum? People are very, very upset and concerned about this. Older people are getting really tired lugging buckets to try and keep their gardens alive. But more than this, we are now under observation from the state. The front page of the Sydney Morning Herald refers to our days to zero. And I would refer people to this article on page 20 of today's Sydney Morning Herald, where Lisa McLean gives an article, writes an article about recycling water. We've got a huge crisis here, and we shouldn't be wasting it by not talking with our community. I think it's probably absolutely certain that we are not sustainable in a hotter climate unless we look seriously at recycling of water. And as Lisa McLean says, and I quote her, "We need a new approach to water management that prioritises recycling and harvesting wasted water. Keeping water locally will not only green and cool communities, it will create more valuable, livable communities. This approach, centred on water recycling, fixes the most glaring flaw in our current system, which is wasting of water." Now, I recently attended the local government water conference in Albury, and that was one of the key messages that was coming across statewide from both government and local government, is that we are now facing, as we've just identified with our climate change motion, a completely new future. One of the things that was demonstrated by the Bureau of Meteorology presentation, which was a new presentation, is that we are facing significantly hotter temperatures for the foreseeable future right across Australia. We need to talk with our community about longer term issues around water and of water use. And one of the things that's been traditionally not very palatable is recycling of water to potability standards. I think our sustainability as a region absolutely depends on this. And that's the reason I would like a town hall style meeting. I'm happy to amend that to a town hall, a session in the town hall or similar venue. And I think I'll put that amendment in from the floor now. For the reasons that Dr. Bayersdorf mentioned, but I think it's just really important. We've got strategies which are all very well, which are talking to the business community. There's a lot of, as we go to level 5, there's been a lot of talk to the business community and some with the business community. But it's the little old ladies, it's people that are frightened, as the articles in the Sydney Morning Herald today say, when the taps turn on but no water comes out. That's the fear that's in the community. And I think we really need to allow and open our doors to the community in some kind of a meeting where, similar to the excellent meeting that was had at the Tops with the business community last week, I think. But it's not just the business community that's affected. We've got a lot of residents here that are really scared. Some of them are planning to leave and some have already left because of the fear. And I think we need as a council to show leadership and actually, meet with them and talk with them. And the fact that we've got a survey going, or we've got a public relations strategy, or that we've hired a public relations strategist from Sydney to send specific, designed messages to the community, it's just not the same as us sitting down with the community and hearing from them and talking with them about the crisis that we're in. We're in new territory, and the least we can do as leaders is to enter into a dialogue with those communities. And I totally reject the suggestion in the comments that this is going to be hijacked by people with an agenda. That's absolutely, I think, not the case if it's well run. We're all in this together, but it's time this council actually demonstrated we're all in this together in terms that encompass...
Time, Councillor O'Connor. Now,
I'll just finish my sentence. In terms that encompass positive outcomes to this drought.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, I actually commend the council for the great work they're doing in many ways of communicating with the public on the water issue. It's a really trying time, and I think the number of ways in which they're getting out and doing that is really good. But in fact, when you look at it and break it down, these fall into particular categories. One is council educating and informing the public, and that's really important. Another one is getting feedback, but it's done kind of online rather than face-to-face. And they do have the pop-up stores of face-to-face, but it's one-on-one. So all those means are really important, and I appreciate and commend the council for doing that. But I do think we're missing one kind of important way, and that's a public way where all those people who you think are making a fuss or creating problems can be, we can publicly answer those so everyone has the same answer. Everyone sees that. A sort of a public way in which we're seen to be accountable. So if you stand up and answer questions in the public, it's a whole different way of communicating, because not only that, we're hearing individual people's problems and everyone's hearing it together, and you're having to respond to that. So you have the chance, or the council, we have the chance to actually take in stuff from the community, learn what people are going through, and also defend some of the things we're doing when there's, kind of, I suppose, gossip gone, awry. We have a chance to actually publicly defend ourselves. And I think we should stand proud of where we stand proud of what we're doing, and be publicly accountable. Whether it's a town hall or whether we do it in a way that we have, in another place, so it doesn't have that stiff sort of, I suppose, council feel about it. But I think it's a good idea. Why not? Why don't we do it? This is the rough and tough of democracy. Things can go not according to plan all the time, but why not do it? We have to do it as councillors. We have to stand up when we're getting elected in a town hall and answer all sorts of questions. It's scary as hell, but, we're brave, we've got guts, let's do it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. I think I've got the rough and tumble with this chair. Is there a speaker against Councillor Gillittley?
No.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Witter, sorry.
Yes. Thank you to Councillors O'Connor and O'Brien for their comments on that. In my speaking against this motion, I have a few questions in regard to, and maybe the mover can answer that in their right of reply. How does a town hall style meeting help any of the fear? If those little old ladies are struggling to carry their buckets to the garden, they're probably going to struggle to get down to a full town hall with the amount of people in there as well. But also, what else? What other info is a town hall going to put out there that's not already out there, as mentioned by both the mover and the seconder? We already have a motion in place and everything else is happening. So things that are happening in regards to getting all the information out there about the water, and as it was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers, being one of the faces of the water conservation effort, that's an important part of my job as a councillor at the moment. But we have stalls at the markets. We've got another thing on this Sunday, and incentives around. Come down and have a chat and you might be able to win a washing machine. Media releases, not only in traditional media, on TV, radio, newspaper, but also on social media. So surely there's enough people that see the advertisements throughout the town. Community meetings, so the business one, the chairman of ARA being invited to get some information to take back to their group, surveys and incentives, and that's I know this, the word gets thrown around a lot in this chamber. The word of transparency gets thrown around a lot. And to me, that's council as an organisation being very transparent in regards to a very emotive issue, that every single bit of information that's out there that should be out there is out there. If people are not accessing every single bit that we've done there to get the information, I can't see how a town hall is going to give them any more new information. A town hall would be really good if new information would be out there. What it does is it just provides a stage to, and I don't know about the management's comment, but it does provide a stage for it to descend into anarchy, as can be demonstrated at one of our very first meetings in regards to the mall up at what's it called nowadays, the Powerhouse Hotel. It turned into anarchy, and we sort of lost control of that. And that's the sort of, that was at a town hall meeting as well. So that's the sort of thing that can happen in this, where people with high opinions and high motives, and especially a high emotive issue, as in the water conservation and our issues around the water, could lose control. I'm not going to say that it will, but there's that option there, as has been demonstrated before. The precedent's been set on that. A very high emotive issue around the mall. So that could happen. So all I want to know out of the mover is, what new information to people who should already be out there, is all out there that we haven't already put out, would go out in the town hall?
I presume, Councillor Tyler, you were... No, Councillor Robinson got in before you, I think. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me first applaud the council staff in the outreach initiatives that are already underway, because we are in a crisis, and the more people we can reach, the better. And I would also like to point out, which might answer Councillor Widder's question, that there is an Armadale Waterwise Facebook page which has provided some very useful tips that's helped me reduce my water consumption. It tells people how to read their meters, how to calculate their daily average water use, and all these things could be told to the community, not just individually one-on-one, but at a town hall meeting where we can address and reach far more people quickly, and they can then to provide their tips and their information about how they are saving water to everybody else. So I think it's a very useful communications exercise that would be helpful rather than a hindrance. And I think that the idea that people hijack public meetings is something that I've never really seen before in any particular important way. And I believe that if a meeting is well chaired and we tell people that they can only speak for 1 or 2 minutes, then for 2 minutes you'd have to have, for an hour or 2 hour meeting, you'd have to have 60 people hijack the meeting. And that's really not hijacking, that's communication. So I think this is a good idea. It will help everybody understand the crisis, help share information and tips, and in the end will do as much as some of the other outreach programmes in reducing and helping us to address this water crisis. Because we have a water crisis, and the more people we can reach, the better. So really, as the other councillor said, let's get on with it.
Yeah, sorry to say this, Councillor Tyler, but Councillor Galetti had his light on ages ago. You're speaking against the motion?
I'm speaking against. You speaking for? All right, look, I'm going to apologise first, because I'm probably not going to be as fluent and as dramatic as Councillor Widders on his beautiful little talk. But anyway, I think we're doing enough as it is. We've got the mall thing coming up on Sunday with all the different people that can answer a lot of questions. Look, I personally think that the staff are busy enough doing whatever they're doing for the water side of it at the present. I know that a lot of them are doing a lot of extracurricular, and it's not along their job line to be doing it, but that's the way that it is. And it is new ground we're walking, but mate, I'm very sure that we're doing enough and especially with the things like in Sunday in the mall and stuff like that.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Councillor Tyler, you're speaking for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What price local democracy? A number of speakers have given us ample proof that they haven't spent very long in local democracy. Councillor Witters showed his absolute newness and really didn't get it, and his remarks I felt were largely irrelevant. This mechanism is another way of connecting with the people, not just to give them information, but to get feedback. So it's not a one-way street, okay? Descending into anarchy, and that's a fairly extreme view. I'm disappointed in the initial line of the management comment that large town hall style community meetings are not conducive to providing meaningful outreach with the community. I agree with what Dr. Bayersdorf said, that management's probably treading a fine line there, but can I say that I've been going to town hall meetings for over 50 years. I love them. They're great ways of interacting with your community, a great way of providing information, a great way of seeking input and ideas, and an important way of being more transparent, of being more open. So let's not be frightened. Let's be brave. Let's front up and let's consult.
Councillor Bailey, you're speaking against?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to remind, I think it was the mover of the motion, that about water recycling, and I can well remember the comments of our CEO when she said that when she lived in London that water had passed through probably 6 sets of kidneys by the time it got to London. And I'd also remind Councillor O'Brien that Steve Green, the erstwhile journalist in the Express, has regularly written about the need for this community to recycle water. So I don't think it's a bolt of the blue coming from the pearls of wisdom from the erstwhile Sydney Morning Herald. I would also point out that we all are doing our bit. We're sharing, I'm sharing, I assume everybody else is, sharing the Facebook comments that are coming out of council with regard to water saving strategies. We've done a major mail out. I've been and done time in the mall, and I assume everybody else has done the same times in the mall. We've provided the shower savers, and my new thought is we go to shower with a friend, and that'll be the next strategy we should all follow. So I think there's lots of things that we've done, and I think I think there's many ways that we can move forward and be positive. But I don't believe that by running a town hall meeting that it will add anything to the equation. People in this town, if they've got a problem with what we're doing, we get phone calls, we get messages, we get emails telling us about the problems. I don't think by providing a town hall meeting for a few people that might have a long-term political agenda for next September is probably appropriate. So I think it's probably, it might be outrageous, but it's probably true. So I would move that.
Councillor Bailey.
So I would think that there's no real point to a town hall meeting, and I think we can better resource ourselves. We're stretched beyond belief at the moment, and I think we should move forward, continue what we're doing in the water space to ensure that we do have a positive outcome with our water strategy for the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Speaker 4. Councillor O'Connor, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think we're really divided about our vision. I think those on the naysayers about this motion are of the view that all we need to do is tell the community what we want them to hear, albeit by multiple channels, and well done and fine. But some of us have a vision of transparent democracy where we actually aren't afraid of our community, where we want to talk with them. I can assure you that every day members of the community who probably don't want to engage with council by sitting down and writing an email, or that, they're not complainers, but they're people that are worried. They're people that are worried and scared, and rightfully so, because the information that we're putting out at the moment is, and it's on the front page of the state newspaper, is that we've got a plan A which is use less water, but that still encompasses days to empty. Plan B is in doubt, and Plan C, there isn't one. So, I mean, people are the very act that we're doing of communicating down to ordinary people in this community is putting fear into them. And I think what we need to do is get everybody who's engaged or concerned about this issue, who are not necessarily articulate or capable internet prowlers, because not everybody uses the internet, not everybody in our community engages in social media. Some people are way too busy and others don't have the equipment or the skills to do it. Those people are really worried about their future. And I think it's the least we can do. I'm not afraid of the community. I'm here because I love them. And I don't want to see them anxious and worried about whether the taps are going to be empty on days to empty. And I think it's just the least we can do. Now, you can have all the information sessions you like. And as Councillor Robinson said, the official releases or even the sessions in the mall, they're helpful, but they only go to one thing, which is how to save water in your home. They don't actually address the larger issue, which is that we're in this together, we're going to be okay, and there are opportunities to be obtained from the situation we're in. One of those is to actually talk with people about recycling water. It's all very well for Councillor Bailey to criticise me because for some reason I haven't noticed the comment about 6 kidneys. Actually, I have. We're drinking the same water the dinosaurs did, but people don't appreciate that we've got a future here because we can go to recycling. And doesn't necessarily have to be at a potable level, but we can segregate. There are technologies and strategies, and that we should be talking with the state government and the federal government about resourcing this. And that's the reason why the second part of the motion is there, is that we ask for our local, our state and federal members to be at the meeting so that they can talk from their perspective directly to the community about things like second pipes, which is possible to do, especially in newer states, which carry grey water for gardening and the toilets and things like that. There's a whole lot of technologies out there, which I learned about at the water conference, to support recycling. We're not doing any of that yet, and we need to get onto it and talk with the community about this. That's the new information, Councillor Widders. But the newest information that we haven't got is a whole community talking back to us. I mean, we're there to lead and to be sympathetic and to be understanding. And also, as Councillor O'Brien said, we may need to explain in more detail what we're doing. The things like turning off the Arboretum tap with no warning to those people who turned up on the weekend to get some out-of-town water for themselves. So we've had a number of really successful meetings. I noticed Ms Halperin is in the room, and she's the chair of SLA, and there was a wonderful meeting with Sustainable Living Armidale. But that's a select group of people, and it was a terrific interaction, Mr Mayor. I think you'd agree, you were there addressing, and there were a lot of good ideas that came forward from that meeting, and there was a sense of togetherness as a community and looking to the future. Less of that, but still a good meeting, was the one last Wednesday or Thursday with Mr McDonald in relation to the business sector and level 5 restrictions. But let's extend that courtesy to the whole community. I don't think it'll turn into a bun fight or anything. It's really quite glib and silly to suggest that our community is not capable of discussing this rationally. But we need to hear from them in an organised way so that they have confidence that we are listening. That's all I can say. We've got to be transparent and helpful and compassionate.
And time. So I'll put that to the vote. Those people in favour of the motion? Those people against?
I call for a division, noted.
Okay, division. Those people against, while you can still get your hands up, please. 4, 6, 7. Those people for? 4. Motion lost. Item 9.1, which is the internal reporting policy. Can I have a mover to Councillor Gray? Councillor Widders, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Dr Mayor. Very simply, this interaction policy has been the same since I think Dr Tiley, Councillor Tiley brought it in during administration, and it seems it's been working. I note that councillors still have access to the second level of service leaders, general managers. So I see that it's something worth moving forward with.
Councillor Gray, you mentioned interaction. Are you looking at 9.1? Yep. Is the internal reporting policy. Reporting policy.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm on interaction policy, sorry. I think that was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Same as, sorry.
Councillors? Hang on, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Witters, what did you say?
Oh, don't worry about that.
Councillor Gray, you happy with what you said for that motion? Yes. And Councillor Witters?
Alrighty, this is just one of those ones that has to be placed on public exhibition for 28 days to give the, as we like to say in this chamber again, transparency, to give the community a chance to have a look at it and have put their submissions in, which I think is a good part of democracy. Even though I'm only a young bud, I'm sure at some point I'll grow into a good flower. Yeah. So the policy. So this is one that'll come back later on after the public exhibition, 28 days. So it's just a straightforward, simple one.
A speaker against? Councillor Robinson?
I don't want to speak against. What I'd like to do is make a minor amendment that we take out the word significant, because it's always very difficult to know what a significant submission is and what isn't a significant submission. So if we take that out, then it just avoids the argument and avoids the verbal diarrhea if that something goes wrong.
I'll just ask Councillor Gray and Councillor Witters if they're happy with the removal of the word significant. Councillor Gray? Councillor O'Connor, you turn your...
I'm just thinking of what the implications of taking that word out is in far as the workload then that is on the administration of managing submissions. I don't see that it would really make all of that much of a difference, so I'm okay.
Councillor Witters, you're happy with it? CEO?
Councillor's going to...
Councillor O'Connor, I've asked the CEO to comment.
Councillors, just to advise you, we would bring any submissions back to the council that were substantive in nature and changes the tone or impacts upon the tone and the substance of the policy, typically in relation to policies such as this. If submissions are received, and they often are, relate to spelling errors or grammatical errors, in those circumstances we wouldn't bring them back to the council.
Okay, a speaker against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That is correct, because both the mover and the second agreed to that. So those in favour of the motion? Carried unanimously. Item 9.2, review of the councillor staff interaction policy. Councillor Gray, Councillor Witters. Councillor Gray?
As I said before, this is another one that has been in place since administration, and it's fair and it's working. And I do note that there is access to the second level of service for councillors, as well as council advisors to the advisory committees as well.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor O'Connor?
Thank you. I find the council agenda notes somewhat, the attachment thereto, which is the actual policy, somewhat confusing. There seems to be a statement that access of councillors would only be to the CEO, absent, her discretion to allow access beyond herself. But I think the little table at the bottom is, to me, I don't understand what that means. when it's set beside the words which seem to exclude access beyond the CEO. And I know the status quo is that councillors would have access to the CEO in the second level, which is the now 3 so-called general managers. And I would think that the appropriate amendment, the appropriate motion would be to actually emphasise that it is to both levels, because the document itself at the moment, to me at any rate, is ambiguous.
I might just ask the CEO if there's any points of clarification for this.
Councillor O'Connor, that the that councillors would have access to levels 1 and 2 of the structure, and if you have a portfolio in relation to a committee, then you would have access to that staff member as well.
So, Councillor Witters?
As a seconder, yeah. Or the thirder. Yeah, I think, just having a look at my quick notes here, I think it creates a sensible, this is a good policy in motion, it creates a sensible barrier between the councillors in regards to their governance role and the workers of the council in regards to their organisation role. And I think there's a good enough interaction, as was mentioned. So a good example is my interactions for the Sports Council. So being able to contact the worker there in regards to any motions there, but also creates, again, it must be my word of the day, the transparency. So if if councillors are able to just talk willy-nilly to anyone within the council, then a decision comes up, then it might be perceived influence, that councillor has influenced the report and the decision, which something like this just sort of protects us and the council in regards to, because as we all know, perception is the truth until proven otherwise. So it just protects us, and it's a good policy, and I'll support it.
A speaker against? Councillor.
Can I ask a question? Is that okay?
Well, Councillor O'Connor did, so I've got no qualms with you asking a question. So, Councillor Goldie?
Well, I'm happy. Well, I don't know. I always thought that the mayor was the conduit for this for a start. Am I correct in saying that? Wrong again.
Okay. So, Councillor Robertson, you used to speak against the motion?
No, again, I want to have a slight amendment, which is that instead of saying endorsed, it's just endorsed for public exhibition, if that's okay with the mover and the seconder.
So, Councillors Graham Witters, that's taking out the word and endorsed.
No.
Isn't it? Oh, for public exhibit, sorry. Yep. So, Councillor Gray and Councillor Witters do not accept any amendments? Yep. You used to speak against the motion?
Yeah,
Or?
well, in that case, yes, I will speak against it, because I found when I read the document it was somewhat contradictory. I mean, there was a clause where it said that, you know, only the CEO was allowed to interact with councillors, and then later on it said that the CEO and the 3 general managers were allowed to interact with councillors, whereas really what it should have said was that the staff, the CAO and the staff nominated below, or any other staff authorised by the CEO to provide advice to councillors, for example, the staff designated to support advisory committees. And I think that as it was worded at the moment, it's confusing. So that's one reason why I don't particularly want to endorse it myself and say that it's hunky-dory. As a councillor, my job is also to listen to the community. And I don't want to give holus bolus support to any policy until I've seen and heard what the community said. And that's what this motion at the moment effectively says. So for that reason, I will certainly be voting against it unless the amendment is put.
A speaker for the motion?
Is this for the amendment?
No, there's been no amendment yet. Councillor Robinson
Okay, yeah.
mentioned it, but then
Yeah, okay, well, I'll
hasn't
move,
taken
I'll
any
move an
further.
amendment that
She
we
hasn't
add the
taken it
words for
further.
public exhibition.
So, sorry?
I will move an amendment that we add the words for public exhibition.
Even though that's exactly what Part B is saying.
Well, to my knowledge of the English language, it does not say anything of the kind.
Yes. It's already there, Councillor Robinson.
No.
So, okay, we've got an amendment that we put the words for public exhibition, so it's been moved and seconded. And I think, have you spoken enough for your amendment, Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I've spoken enough.
So, Councillor O'Connor, do you want to speak to the amendment?
Thanks. Yeah, I just think what Councillor Robinson is quite cogent. We're endorsing it for public exhibition. We're not necessarily endorsing it per se. We've got to wait till it's been publicly exhibited and we've got responses before we decide or can decide whether we endorse it. It's fair. I know it sounds picayune, but it's the proper use of the English language, and I think there's what is wrong with adding for public exhibition in level A, because that qualifies the word endorsed, whereas without that it looks as if we're voting to support it, and that's may not be the case pending the response from the community.
Speaker against the amendment? If there's not, I'll put the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? Those against? Amendment lost. Going back to the original motion, I'll put that motion no. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Carried. Item 9.3, which is an information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Murat, Councillor Witters. Councillor Murat. Councillor Witters.
I do have a question,
Councillor Robinson.
and this is something for information, so I believe I'm entitled to it. It's only a very simple question. That presumably, no, hang on. I'm getting, cancel that.
Okay, there's no speaker against. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Before we go to item 10.1, I found the table a little bit hard to follow, so I might ask the CEO to provide some clarification, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. As this is, I've had an explanation from our Chief Financial Officer. As it's a fairly arcane accounting exercise, I'll ask her to explain it to the councillors.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. The report that we're considering is a 2019-20 carry forwards report. It's effectively asking Council to adopt a budget review reflecting the carry forward projects from the 18-19 financial year. So just to explain the tables in the report, when we have a look at the 18-19 budget at the end of June, there's a number of projects that we haven't finalised at that stage, so we need to look at both the revenues and expenditures associated with unfinalised projects to determine what we may need to bring forward in terms of budget, so we can allow those projects to be completed. So there are two columns in the report, both in the capital and the operating tables. The column that has the red numbers is the revenue budgets to be carried forward. So those exist where we expected to receive a certain amount of income against the project and we didn't for one reason or another. So we're just carrying forward the remaining budget because we expect to receive the remaining income in the 19-20 financial year. In the column where the black figures is the expenditure, so that is the expenditure on projects that we budgeted for, haven't completed by the end of June. So the remaining expenditure budget is carried forward by way of this report, so that allows us to have funding to finalise those projects in the 1920 financial year. To fund the projects that are proposed to be adopted through the carry forwards report, we do put the funding into an internal reserve at the end of June. That'll be reflected in our annual financial statements. So what happens in the report attachment you'll see is those funds come out of reserve to basically fund those projects in the 1920 budget. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Councillor? Councillor Gray? Councillor Tiley.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Kelly, Mr. Bray, I'm sorry. On the first page, there's plant purchases and sales. Now, my understanding is that they're funded from plant reserve. Why would that be in with the other carry forwards? It doesn't impact general fund or water or sewage fund, I would have thought.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. No, there is no plant reserve as such. So those carry forwards for plant are funded through internal reserve that we have at the end of June in conjunction with other projects as well.
Because there was one.
Plant reserve has fluctuated up and down over the years. You'll note at the end of June 2018, we considered the annual financial statements. At that time, we had some issues with the level of cash and investments that Council held. Once we took out the external restrictions, there was little funding available to reflect in terms of the unrestricted cash balance. And the only internal reserve we were able to fund at that point in time was the ELE reserve.
This is the most serious matter, Mr. Mayor, that our plant reserve has been dissolved without the imprimatur of the council. Now, there was the idea of the plant reserve is that so that you don't rely upon your general fund to purchase and sell your plant. So I guess what I should be doing is now calling for a report on why that happened and what the redress is. How much money was in the reserve when it was closed down? How much money went across to general fund? There's a lot of questions.
Councillor Tiley, I think that as the CFO mentioned, it was at the, 2018 last year? 17. When we get the council? 17, 18?
2018.
18. There is very, very little cash reserve, as our CFO mentioned. If you'd like to put forward a motion requesting a report as to the finances at that time, I just remember our CFO, our CEO at the time, Chris Rose, had real problems with the budget, and this was before our present CFO.
Plant purchases if we haven't got a plant reserve. There's only one way, it's out of the general fund. Wow, this is gobsmacking.
Your mic, please, Councillor Tiley. Councillor Gray, you were the next, I think.
Well, mine's red.
Councillor Gray and Councillor Tiley were together, so I'll go back to Councillor Gray. Thank you.
I just have a question regarding the projects bringing forward, and note that the hydrotherapy pool is not in the list. Have you got any explanation that could enlighten us on that?
So we don't have the hydrotherapy pool budget in this list, so that project is not programmed to be undertaken in 1920.
Is there a guarantee that that is going to be into the following financial year budget? Because this was a top priority for the community, the hydrotherapy pool.
It'll be,
So Connor,
sorry. I was just going to comment that would be a matter for council in determining what budget it will set for that year.
Councillor Connor.
Oh, thank you. I'm prepared to move the motion with Councillor Tiley's assistance in relation to the matter that he raised about the plant reserve.
Just ask the CEO just to provide some clarification on as to this situation.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. The matter relating to the cash reserves, both general fund, or particularly the general fund, had been brought to the councillor's attention at the time of the finalisation of the 17-18 budget during the workshops, and we have repeatedly, through the CFO, highlighted the issues related to the reserves and the need to use the ELE to actually prop up the unrestricted cash reserves as at the end of June 18. If I can highlight this I'm sorry, Councillor Tiley, that it's a surprise to you, but it certainly has been a matter that both the CFO and I, as well as the executive, have lost sleep over the last 12 months, and we thought we had raised it significantly with the councillors over the past 12 months.
With great respect, the ELE reserve is a restricted reserve, and you're saying, Kelly, that that's the only restricted reserve we've now got.
Internally restricted reserve council had at the 30th of June 2018. Just to clarify, the carry forwards listed in the report, an internal reserve was set aside at the 30th of June 2019 to fund those carry forwards. You'll see reflected in the attachment the funding being brought out of the reserve to fund those projects, and that does include the carry forward for the plant. So it's not, the plant carry forward will not have a detrimental impact on the general fund cash position through the carry forward. It is funded in line with those other projects as an internal reserve at 30th of June.
Yeah, I'll move that the council receive a report as soon as possible about detailing all of council's reserves, internally restricted or otherwise, and then we'll just take it from there.
Councillor Tiley, you want to just look at the present time, or do you want to see a history?
As at 1st July this year would suffice. And I've got all the figures before then, back to 2016, so I'll do a comparison and have my 2 and 6 months worth at the appropriate meeting. Yes, they have. It's available. If you want to, yeah, by all means. But I just cannot believe that our plant reserve's gone up in smoke.
A figure of speech, Councillor Tiley. I don't think the dozers and the graders have gone up in smoke, but yes. Councillor Tiley, you wish to speak for your motion? Councillor O'Connor?
Oh, I just want to support. I think it's important that we do get a report, because it's our ultimately these 11 people around the table are absolutely accountable to the government and to the community for things like restricted reserves, and we need to find out about this with great respect to everybody. I think it's just something that needs to be done, and quickly. Thanks.
A speaker against this motion? If not, I'll put it. Those people in favour? My apologies. Councillor Gray.
I cannot express how disappointed I am that we have councillors in this room that have taken till now to realise that they do not understand what's been happening with the budget and the money. We have been well and truly informed over the past 2 years, if not more informed than whatever happened prior to that. And unfortunately, the decisions of the past have caught up with this term of council, and in passing the budgets that we have, etc. We have acknowledged that that has been there, and now there is this request to go back over and over what's already been done. And I am going to be very respectful in saying this, that it may uncover expenditure that was overdone during past councils and during administration that may be coming back to bite us in the proverbial. And it disappoints me that people have taken till now to comprehend what's needed to be done to bring this council into fiscal balance and doing the due diligence. I just find it absolutely deplorable.
Speaker for the motion? If not, Councillor Tyler, you do have a right to reply. Okay, I'll put the motion as on the screen. Those people in favour? Those people against? Was it carried? Did you carry? Oh, sorry. Can you? Those people against again, please. 5. So it's carried. Now going back to item 10.1.
Mr Mayor, could I ask we receive a report as part of this, as Councillor Gray raised, can we have a report for the next meeting on the hydrotherapy pool, where it stands, what the challenges are and where the future is?
I don't think we need a motion for that. I'll take that on board.
Thank you.
10.1, can I have a move and a second, please? Councillor Murat. Councillor Withers. Councillor Murat. Councillor Withers. Still on 10.1. So, Councillor Withers, did you have a... No? Okay. But I'm just saying, do you want to comment? No comment. Anyone wish to speak against? If not, put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Do you want yours registered? No. 10.2, debt write-off delegation. Can I have a move in a second? Councillor Murat. Councillor Withers. Councillor Murat, you...
No comment other than to say it's sort of common sense. We don't need petty cash amounts coming to council for approval.
Councillor Withers.
I concur with Councillor Murat.
Speaker against? Otherwise, put a vote. Those in favour? Those against, Councillor O'Connor? Item 10.3, before we get a move in second, I just ask the CEO to provide some comments and clarification on this, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. This report relates entirely to the standpipe that is available to access water at the Arboretum. It is targeted at our rural residents who do not have access to our reticulated water supply. It is an attempt in the short term to restrict access to that standpipe to those who genuinely need it for domestic purposes from the rural areas. It isn't for use for stock or for any horticultural purposes. It is for domestic supply. And I think in our hurry to prepare the report, we did exclude we didn't insert the possibility that people will need to produce either a rates notice or tenancy agreement in order to get the access cards to be able to access them.
No, just something, for some reason your mic went off.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. I've just unfortunately realised I have a conflict of interest in this item, so I'm going to leave.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can ask the CEO, the there is differences in what is on page 18, in that there's 8,000 litres per month per application, yet at our briefing we're talking about 8,000 litres per person per month. So I'd just like that clarified. And also the prepaid water charges, it says you will require to prepay for water they plan to take. The question is, if they use 2,000 litres rather than the 8,000, will that flow on, not the water flowing, I mean the finances flow on to the next month? So if the CEO can just comment on that, please.
If our GM businesses would like to clarify that.
Thank you. 8,000 litres, it should say, per person, and that stands until it's used. And when it's used, then it needs another top-up. 8,000 litres per month. It's, sorry, whatever, sorry.
I guess my question is that at 8,000 litres, when the person comes up to get the card, do they notify how many people in the household?
In the household.
Because 8,000 litres per person per month is much, much higher than the water consumption.
It should be 160 litres per person per month, and however many people are in that household. Per day, per day. I'm getting my days and months mixed up. So 160 litres per person per day, per month, per household. And then you have to nominate how many people in that household.
Thank you. Before we get a move and second, any questions before we go? Okay, can I have a move and a second, please? Councillor Withers, Councillor Morat, Councillor Withers.
Microphone, but doesn't matter. Already done. Yeah, already sorted. Again, this issue was raised by council a couple of weeks back, in regards to the overuse. I think the regular use up there at the Arboretum peaked fairly high over a weekend a few weeks back, so that was really good of the council to notice that and to take decisions to try and alleviate those concerns. It sort of fits around one of my concerns that I've seen in the community with regards to households looking to be on 160 litres per person per day. I have personally witnessed residents walking across to their neighbour's house to use their front tap, so they're not getting charged for theirs. So this sort of fits along that line as well, where we need to be getting the water to those that desperately need it, so that it manages that, so those households that need the water for the right purposes are getting the water, and those that don't need it, they just want to use it for other means that everyone else has to still struggle with, then that loophole's not being used. So I really hope that as desperate times continue to happen, that we don't go to desperate measures of people not understanding the community as a whole needs to be responsible, and that they're starting to look internally about their own personal needs instead of the community as a whole. So I think this sort of helps manage that. So I really commend the council for looking at different ways to let people access the water that they desperately need, they can't get access to, but without people taking advantage of that generosity.
Councillor Merrow?
I just concur with what Councillor Withers just said.
A speaker against?
I'd like to propose an amendment and that's an amendment to A, that residents are charged $10 for the water access card, and the extra cost of implementing the system is levied as an additional charge per kilolitre of water.
Before we go down that, I might just get staff to clarify what the implications of that might be. Through your CEO.
Two issues there. One is the water access fee. taking it from $100 down to $10. The $100, a bit of work went into it for the back office cost. So it's a technology cost, servicing people when they come to the front counter, checking that, loading up all that information. So we're not looking to make any money out of that. It is a cost recovery. It's about roughly half of the network charge per annum. So if you live in town, you pay, I think it's $225. So we're asking for $100 for that, councillor. If your main supply is with water trucks, in other words, your water carting with 10,000 litres, or those sorts of trucks, you won't need a water access card, so you won't have to pay that. This is really just to deal with the Arboretum and Mackie Park up in Guyra. So we believe it is simply a cost recovery. In terms of changing the water charge, I think we've had a bit of an exchange on that. That's a change to your existing water fees and charges. It would need a public exhibition in its own right. My advice to council is you're not that far away from reviewing 2020-21 charges, so early 2020 you'll be reviewing all these charges, and our preference would be to look at them holistically, so all our fees, all our charges.
Thank you. So, Councillor Robinson, you still want to pursue?
If I can get a seconder, I still want to pursue it.
Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Brien. So, your have we got the wording up?
Yeah, I've got
Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Yes, well, I certainly agree with all the sentiments on preventing the abuse at the Arboretum, and it's essential that we do introduce an access card. But it does seem to some extent this policy has been developed on the hop. We started off with 8 kilolitres per household, then it went to 8 kilolitres per household per person. Now it's gone down to 160 litres per person per day. And I think really that the issue of how you charge for access to this is also maybe needs some thought, and we should be thinking about rural residents as we're doing this, because however we charge it, we're all agreed we need to recover the costs, and we also need to make sure we look after our rural residents, and those rural residents are suffering at the moment. They're already in considerable pain from the devastating drought, the resultant loss of income, and the bushfires. They've already had to buy tanks to transport the water from council's filling station to as their rainwater runs dry. They're already going to have to pay in advance for the water they take from the Arboretum. You won't be able to use a credit card. And then on top of that, we're going to be slugging them for another $100 for the access card. And maybe I've completely misunderstood it, but I've looked at all our water charging policies, and we just don't have a fee for a water access charge. All I can see is 6 different charges for domestic users, and we're going to put this on public exhibition. So putting it on public exhibition now means we deal with this particular issue, which is relevant now and might not be relevant if we're lucky enough and it rains and our dam gets to 50% by the 1st of July. So this is the time to be looking at it now while we have the issue on our hand, rather than postponing it for another 6 months, which is what we're really doing. And my amendment basically looks after the rural residents. I don't know how many people would want to use it, but I suspect that most people will be ditching their water carting rather than actually going and collecting a kilolitre or 2 kilolitres or 8 kilolitres a month from the Arboretum rather than actually paying for the water carting. So probably a lot of them, bearing in mind their financial problems at the moment, they'll be doing this. And so I think that probably more people than you might expect will be using the access to the Arboretum, as has turned out to be the case in the past. And my amendment is really looking at how we do it now and simply reinforces the message that water is precious and that we need to conserve it. And this is the message we need to give out now, not in 6 months' time. And this message, again, will be heard by our entire community, not just rural residents. And we all benefit if people do the right thing and reduce their consumption. We're less likely to run out of water, which, again, we've heard time and time again is a real issue. And if we don't run out of water, then we avoid forking millions out to transport water to Armadale. There were problems at the Arboretum, especially problems of verification, and that shows that the charging systems can be abused. But if we have a charging system, and starting now, saying that water is precious, that will undoubtedly reduce that abuse now and in the future. And maybe if my figures were worked out saying charging $5 a kilolitre for water would raise the same amount of money over a year as the average rural household using 8 kilolitres a month. And if our charges don't discourage abuse, and this is where we need to think about it now as well as in the future, we might have to create portable water from what's currently being used, discharged via a sewage treatment plant. And I was told at the excellent meeting on Thursday that would cost $7 a kilolitre. So that is even higher than any possible increase in the charges that would be introduced under this system to rural residents. So let's establish the principle of rewarding people for their efforts. And also remember that we should be trying as best we can now as well as in the future to conform to the New South Wales Government's best practice and guidelines. And by doing so, our entire community will benefit, especially everyone who does the right thing, and we'll be being kinder at the same time to our rural residents. And really, because of the drought, because of the fires and all the other things, our rural residents really do need help. Thank you.
Just before you, Councillor Gladley, Councillor Robinson, because you've just moved this as a new amendment, can you clarify how the $90 difference, because you're changing it from $100 access cost to a $10, $90, how do you apportion it across the quantities of water, which we don't know how much people are going to use? So I'm a little bit lost as to how you assume to do this.
Well, I would hope Council will have some idea of how much is likely to be used. And my suggestion was we take an estimate of the average use per household, which possibly was, as in the original policy, 8 kilolitres per household per month, and we work on that. That would be a pretty good estimate, I think.
So before you go, Councillor, I've got to ask the seconder.
If I understand it, because I've only just heard of Councillor Robinson's suggestion, that in fact there's greater, so it's discouraging water usage by putting more money on how much, so paying for how much is used, but not creating a greater obstacle to access. So in fact what it does is discourage, it encourages water saving, but doesn't discourage those who actually need access. So, for those, we know that farmers and people from out of town have also, as she said, suffered a great deal and have had to spend a lot of money on other kind of infrastructure for their farms and housing. And I think it's quite a logical thing to do, is to not have such a steep charge, but also built into it, discourage overuse of water. So if that's my understanding of your position, Councillor Robinson?
Yes, that's correct.
So, speaker against, Councillor Gladley?
Well, there's two things that I see here. I understand where Councillor Robinson's coming from. There's no two ways about that. But what the hurdles that we've got, if we take this on and change it in what it already is, how long will that take to instate for a start, or put in, because we're changing the prices of water itself rather than putting a surcharge on having a card? So what's the implements there? I mean, obviously if we put a $100 on and we've got a card, we can start that as soon as that comes through. With the other one, as far as changing the price of water, how long will that take to amend it or to implement it? How long will that take to do?
we would have to go back and calculate how to recover that money and make it fair. So therefore, we would bring it back at the earliest to your November meeting, and then you've got a public exhibition period that falls, starting to fall over Christmas and New Year. So realistically, probably February, we'd be looking at it, and that presents problems for us.
Is that set? Councillor Glentley, you happy with that? Councillor O'Connor, you turn your mic off, please.
Sorry. Well, this is something that can be abused for the next 2 or 3 months. That is what we don't want. We want to get this up straight away. This is what I believe, and as we've said before, the amount of water that's going through there, we have to fix this straight away. We can't sit around for 2 or 3 months till after Christmas, I don't believe.
Okay, so you're speaking against, a speaker for, Councillor O'Connor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think that in principle, Councillor Robinson's proposal is preferable. And the reason I support it, I think we're caught in a difficulty in the sense that I've got to go back and recalculate. But the better principle is that Councillor Robinson has said $100 is a lot of money for people who don't have any money, or on welfare effectively, which a lot of our rural people are because they've got no rain and no income. So what Councillor Robinson is proposing is actually in line with the best practice water pricing. It's just that we've sort of been caught out a bit in not calculating this and being ahead of ourselves on this. It's a shame that we've had abuse, but hardly unexpected, given that the drought picks no favourites, and it's being felt in Uralla Shire and by people who are on the receiving end of those large tankers that have taken more than a small amount from the water stands. If we go out, there's no reason why we couldn't have a very fast extraordinary meeting this month. It's just a matter of doing some calculations to see if we can put that $90 into a slightly higher per kilolitre pricing. And I think that is the fairest and soundest way to go, because it doesn't put obstacles in the path of people who really can't afford a $100 hit. Maybe there's another way we can do it, add it to people's rate notices, but to ask people to suddenly stump up $100 just to get something that they've not had to do before when they're already down on their uppers, if that's the correct expression, is very harsh. And we would actually be doing a better thing if we added that administration cost into the price per kilolitre of water. So that's my thinking on it. And I'm very happy to turn up here for a short meeting in the next week or so, once the staff have done their calculations to see how they can put that into the actual usage rather than this big one-off barrier. I mean, if staff can come up with some other way whereby people can pay that $100 off in $10 increments or something, but say we get a gully raker that fixes all our water problems in a month's time, that $100 is really a bit unfair. So that's my view.
Speaker.
Well, can I put a clarification to my motion? That the motion does not say going to bring it back to the next council meeting. The intention of the motion, and if that's not clear I can reword it, is that council staff do the best estimate they can of the additional cost of putting the $90 into the charge per kilolitre of water, and then they put it out on public exhibition tomorrow. There shouldn't be any delay, and if there is any refinement, then it can come to the next council meeting once we've revised it. But the idea is to do the best estimate of the cost and then put it out on public exhibition as soon as possible, so there's no additional delay compared to what there would have been otherwise.
Before I continue, I might ask our General Manager Scott to comment on this.
I'm happy to be corrected by Kelly over there, but we don't have the capacity to take shortcuts when we're varying a fee or a charge. So we have a process we have to go through, including the public consultation. It's got set periods. So there's a number of hoops to jump through, and I can't see how council could shortcut that in any significant way.
Thank you, Scott. Speaker against, Councillor Murat.
Mr Mayor, common sense has got to prevail here. Arguing over $90, if this is a prolonged drought, locking someone into a system where they pay no upfront charge but have an increased water charge could end up costing them more than $100. We've got no idea how long this drought's going to run for. The people need water, not in 3 months' time. They need access to it now. We have to be responsible and limit the bleeding of water to where it's not supposed to go as a responsible council. So the only thing we can do is to keep it the status quo, put the $100 charge in, give people access, and I'm afraid this amendment's just stupid, to put it bluntly.
Thank you, Councillor Murat. Speaker 4. Otherwise, Councillor Witters, you have a right to reply. No, you have the mover of the original motion has the right to reply to any amendment.
Awesome. So just re-concur what I said earlier, but just having a look at the actual motion, I'm going to assume that it's supposed to be part B, part C, but it's that piece. Says that if there is something in there about public submissions received, if anyone, so the actual motion is just to put this thing out onto public exhibition so people can have a bit of a chat about it. I've sort of jumped the gun, I think, with my initial comments. So this proposal that the amendment makes, if there's enough support with that in the public exhibition, then the council can look at it from there onwards. But we need to, I think we're jumping the gun a little bit, and we need to put it out to public submission. Let them have a look at it. They can come back if there's anything that they say there, then we can have a look. But to put this amendment up now, I don't think is necessary. It's just one of those ones that we understand the situation, that it is trying to put the water in the right spots to the right people. And the pricing, I think, is a good indicator of, well, if you want to take water where you're not supposed to, you're going to have to pay a price for it. So the people who will need it will find a price, and I concur with what Councillor Murat has also said. So just encourage councillors to have a look at the actual motion. It's just to put it out into public display first, and if there's no significant comment from, well, it doesn't say significant, but I think you get the point, comment from out of the public exhibition period in regards to the price, and the set fee still be the same of $100.
Okay, councillors, I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment? 2. Those against? 3. So the amendment is lost. I'll put now the motion.
Can I ask a question? And that question is simply that presumably because this is all going to have to go on public exhibition, it means that no card can be introduced over the next month, which is something, again, I hadn't really thought about and thought that maybe this is something we should be doing more urgently than that. And is there any other way we can deal with it?
As far as I know, that will be the process. We've got to wait for the 28 days before we can... The staff are most probably going to work behind the scenes in getting that sort of system ready and in preparation for it, but they can't do anything until the 28-day period. So, put the original vote...
Yeah, and just say, except possibly work on the abuse.
They will be working on the abuse, don't you worry. So I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of the original motion? 6, 7. Those against? 2. Thank you. Oh, can someone just let Libby know that she... Councillor Martin? Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I don't want to belabour the point, but I think you're in breach of clause 10.20 in relation to Councillor Witters having a right of reply. He's allowed to speak on each and every amendment, and he has a general right of reply at the end.
10-20, a councillor who, during the debate at a meeting, moves the original motion has the right to speak on each amendment
Yep.
to the motion and a right of general reply to all observations.
that are made during the debate in relation to the motion. So
Hmm.
that general reply is at the end. He's allowed to speak on each amendment.
Is that also Councillor Seconder?
No, that's you.
Yeah.
No. So anyhow, I just feel that, sure, on each amendment, Councillor
And,
Witters,
and it's also and to any amendment. So,
to the motion,
yeah, there's your right reply to.
on each amendment, he can have a speak during the debate. And then he has a general right of reply at the end. Which, anyway, I just, a motion.
I think that, Councillor Tyler, I thank you very much for your comments. Yes. Moving on to 11.1, which is the DA. Mover, please, Councillor Morat. Councillor Tyler, Councillor Morat. Any speaker against? Okay. Now, this is division, so I'll require hands up, please. Those in favour? Unanimous. So, good. Thank you. Uh, 12.1, which is the work health and safety policy. Can I have a mover and a second? Councillor Murat, Councillor Martin, Councillor Murat. Thank you, Councillor Murat. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, exactly the same for me, Mr Mayor. It's not required by legislation for council to have this policy, but I think it's a really important policy showing a commitment to protecting the workers, volunteers, contractors, whoever's involved with council, so it should be commended.
A speaker against?
So,
Councillor Robertson?
yeah, I'd like to ask a question, which was, I notice in the policy that it was to achieve a safe and incident-free workplace, but this is basically a health and workplace safety. So I was wondering why we didn't have a healthy, safe, an objective of a healthy, safe and incident-free workplace, why we couldn't add the word healthy to the policy.
CEO, can you, if there's no objection to that, putting those words in? So, are we clear where the words go? Good. Okay. Anyone? Councillor Connor, you wish to speak against?
No, I just want to suggest a slight amendment. Which is that we delete again this idea of significant. Let's just keep it uniform, and if no submissions are received.
A seconder for that?
No,
Oh, I'll
can
just
I-
put it back to Councillor Murat.
Sorry,
Councillor
can I
Martin.
just make an observation? Oh, it doesn't matter.
Are you two happy with that? All right. Okay, I'll put that to the vote then. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now, Councillors, items 13.1, 13.2, 13.3 and 13.4 are all information. 13.5 are all information. Right through to 16.1. So I'd like to treat them in globo unless someone wishes to pull one out. Councillor Muir.
I'd like to delete 16.1. I want to move that separately.
Any others that want to pull out? Okay, a seconder for putting in globo? Councillor Tiley. Those in favour? Carried. So, Councillor O'Connor, that was 16.1, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's just under 16. Look, I think we'll find that whilst the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee of 18th of September have been added, 27th of August haven't been displayed in the attachments, and so I would just make a slight amendment that we defer the 27th of August 2019 minutes till the next meeting when hopefully they'll be available.
Councillor Connor, I had trouble hearing you. Could you repeat that, please?
Oh, I apologise. Is that better? Right. Look, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the minutes for the meeting of the 27th of August 2019 of the Audit and Risk Committee, I think that should say Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, those minutes haven't been attached to our attachments. So we can really only go forward with the 18th of September ones where the minutes are there. So I'm just moving a slight amendment that I move that the 18th of September minutes are there, but I defer the 27th of August minutes until the next meeting, presuming that they can then be put on the agenda for next month and presented in the attachments.
Councillor Connor, is that the wording you'd like? All right.
A matter arising would be that those other minutes appear in the next council agenda for the November meeting with the minutes attached to that agenda. So we don't need to put it in the motion. Thanks.
Okay, are we clear on on that motion? Anyone wish to speak against? No? I'll put that. Those in favour? Carried. And I think the last one is 16.2, which is the minutes. Councillor Martin, Councillor Tiley, Councillor Martin? Councillor Tiley? I'll put that. Anyone wish to speak against? Councillor Connor, your microphone.
No, yeah, that's right now anyway. In relation to the 2-hour parking on Barney Street and whether there been any consideration of just having it on the northern side of the street, because sometimes the queues for the GP service on the southern side of the street, you can be in there for more than an hour or more than 2 hours, and that might cause difficulties. And I just wondered if there have been any thoughts about that. Doctor surgery.
Oh, the doctor surgery.
So I've certainly been there for more than 2 hours.
Councillor Martin, as chair of that committee, did you get those notes from Councillor Robinson? Yep. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put this. Those in favour of this, we're going to move and second it. Carried. Okay, not 18.1 has been answered, so councillors...
Oh, can I have a couple of comments on that? And, but first of all, I would like to also raise a matter of an urgent nature.
No, what's the matter? I will
well, the matter of the urgent nature is in relation to 8.1, where it says that the motion was unlawful, and it relates to clause 3.13 of the Code of Meeting Practice, which relates to questions on notice. And this wasn't a question on notice, and it certainly wasn't anything that could comprise a complaint against the General Manager or member of staff of council, or a question that implied wrongdoing by the... So the question is, what was the correct reason why this motion was considered unlawful? And also bearing in mind that it was already implemented elsewhere in the current agenda. It seems to be that it's not unlawful for this agenda. It couldn't have possibly been unlawful for the last.
Councillor, I do not consider that an urgent nature. I consider a 5-minute break more urgent. So we will break until 6:30, where we'll reconvene. Thank you. And could I have a mover that we break for Councillor Witters, Councillor Martin, those in favour? Carried. Yes. Please. Can I have a mover and a second, Councillor Murat, Councillor Martin, that we resume standing orders? Those in favour? Thank you. Can I have a move and a second? Councillor Murat, Councillor Martin, I'll say that we move into closed session. Those in favour? Carried.